Timo, letzte Frage. Was ist das Wichtigste am Mobilfunk?
Genug Datenvolumen, Freiminuten und volle Kostenkontrolle?
Richtig!
Auch Kongstar hat die richtige Antwort. Das Prepaid Surf-Paket. Jetzt neu mit 1,5 GB und 250 Freiminuten für nur 10 € für 30 Tage. Sichere dir außerdem bis zum 20. Mai 10 GB extra. Im Handel und auf kongstar.de.
Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. This is Chrism, and I'd like to welcome you to a conversation about your Kundalini awakening experience. In this conversation, we'll be discussing ecstatic bliss and some of the many positive feelings and phenomena of the Kundalini. But in the beginning, I would, as we always do, I would like to thank Amelia Santara and her family in the Kingdom of Kerry, Ireland, for sponsoring this show. She pays money out of her account every month for this show to exist, and I just want to thank her for allowing this information to come out, because God knows I couldn't afford it at this point. So thank you, Santara.
Well, you're very welcome indeed, Chris, and as is everybody. It's my privilege and my honour as well.
Well, once again, we all thank you for this. And I also like to thank Eileen Laurel for the many positive benefits that she has contributed to this program over the years, the many years that she's been a part of this. So thank you, Eileen. Thank you, Glenn Ola, for the design and maintenance of the Kundalini Awakening Systems1.com website. Thank you, Ed. Thank you, everyone who has donated their time or their resources into the continuing mission of Kundalini Awakening Systems in order to bring information and understanding to the Kundalini Awakening process, without religion or some kind of a controlling belief system, just a straight information that happens to people from every belief system and every religion. So I'd like to thank everyone who has contributed to that over the years.
And Chris, may I interrupt you and also thank you for what you have done and what you continue to do, and just take this opportunity to tell everybody, which I'm sure they know already, that Prism works 24/7 supporting people and teaching people about Kundalini. And he does not charge for his teachings. He doesn't charge for any of his support or for the Shakti-Pats. And Prism gives to every single person equally and freely in surrender, love, and it's a living devotion to the divine Kundalini. And I'd like to invite you, if you want, to support Prism in his work. And I have a website number that I can give you, or at least an address. It's actually Prism's blog, and there is a donate button there. And when you donate to Prism, you're supporting him in his work, and it's also a lovely act of service for the benefit of everybody who receives from Prism the teachings and the support that he gives. So all donations are received with love and gratitude, and here is the address that you can contact. It's www.ascension-kundalini.blogspot.com. It's very long, so I'll do that again. Ascension is spelled Ascension, and I'm sure nobody is as bad a speller as I am, but I'll just say that again. Ascension. So it's www.ascension-kundalini.blogspot.com, and the donate button is at the top of the page on the right hand side. And so thank you for that, and over and out from me for a while. Back to you, Chris.
Thank you, Amelia. I'm going to comment briefly about that, and thank you for that announcement, Amelia. in a moment here. For other areas of resource where the information that's given in this radio broadcast can be heard and read would be Kundalini Awakening Systems, .com, Kundalini Awakening Systems 1 at Yahoo Groups, Kundalini Awakening Systems 1 on Facebook, Kundalini Awakening ! On Facebook, A Kundalini Ashram on Facebook, Kundalini Healing on Facebook, Kundalini Healing on Yahoo. And we also have a Kundalini Awakening group on in the community section of Google+. And so you have many of the different social media we're trying to utilize to get this information out to you. You can reach me personally at KFire4All, and that's KFIREFORALL at yahoo.com. Or you can reach Amelia at kundalinimatters@gmail.com. So please feel free to communicate your questions, your issues, your concerns, and your joy and your experiences to those various outlets for communication about your Kundalini awakening process. For many years, I've been doing this, and I get chided a lot by people who appreciate this information for not charging for it. Not only am I chided by the people who, by some students, people who have decided to become students, private students, but also by other Kundalini teachers, because they feel that what I'm doing underscores their, $5,000 entrance fee for receiving, their Shakti Path or their teaching or their system of bringing Kundalini into a person. I didn't have a lot of money at the beginning of my awakening, and I searched and searched and searched for a teacher, and this was before the internet. So this is before the internet. This is before cell phones. And so basically my searches brought me into bookstores. And even at those times, I was hard-pressed to even be able to afford a book. So as the Kundalini continued to expand within me and teach me in the many ways that it did and does, I made kind of a personal commitment to bring this information to people without regard to the monetary aspects. And I hear from people, it's like, well, Tristan, they're not going to respect you. They're not going to respect your information. They're not going to respect what it is you have to give unless you charge for it. If you don't charge for it, as far as they're concerned, it's worthless. It's worthless information to them unless you charge them, some sort of a price to receive this information. And I've resisted that for a long time. I've resisted it to the point where I would empty my bank account and by giving seminars and such. And I've reached a point where I've had to accept donations. And so I do accept donations, and I'm grateful for Santara to make that announcement, and I know Eileen has also made those announcements, and I understand that there are those of you who have donated, on that Ascension Kundalini blog spot, and I appreciate it. I really do appreciate it, and it does enable me to continue to take care of the basic necessities while I do work with the Kundalini, and people in different countries. I'm working with people from all over the world, and that means all time zones. So, for instance, I was up until 4:30 in the morning last night working, and then, of course, when I got up today, I'm immediately starting to work with people. I do put quite a lot of time and effort into this, and I think it is making the world a better place. It is bringing more light to people on this world, and I encourage all of you to do the same. Bring more light into this world. I don't care if how you do it. If you donate to me, fine. But also, in addition to any kind of a donation you make, in your attitudes and your behaviors and expressions to each other, to other people, strangers especially, bring love and bring that love and light and radiance into your behaviors with other people. And this leads me right into the topic that we're talking about today, which is the ecstatic and blissful states of the Kundalini. Very often a person is brought into the Kundalini path without knowing it. Many people come from extremely challenging childhoods where they've been raped and molested and abused and beaten and tortured in many different ways that the refinement mechanisms of karma can bring to a person. And it's difficult. It's very difficult. There are many scars and there are many lesions of memory and harshness and pain, confusion and fear that a person can attach to based upon what has occurred to them in their childhood and the early aspects of their life. And as the Kundalini begins to permeate their being, as they reach a certain threshold, and the threshold is different for each person, but as they reach the threshold where enough karma has been balanced, enough karma has been taken care of, the Kundalini begins to seep into those expressions and experiences, and yet not to the point of obliterating the person's responsible actions of choice and behaviorism, but it seeps in enough so that the person begins to feel a pull by the Kundalini, a pull towards the gifts of grace, and some of these gifts of grace are what we're going to talk about today in this program. The gifts of grace at the very, very early onset of Kundalini can be just a desire to be of service for other people, a desire to be of service in the many ways that a person can by helping little kids, helping elderly people, helping people in need, people who cannot help themselves, helping little animals, helping the environment, helping to the flowers to grow and the insects to thrive. I mean, helping mother, quote unquote, nature, which we all know as to be the feminine aspect of the Kundalini. And so as we in this early area of the process, the Kundalini awakening process, become drawn into the expression of giving aid and assistance to other people, so do we open up levels of our heart that can allow us to put aside the terrible, terrible, terrible experiences and karmas of the early childhood and the raising of the person. Now, this is not about everyone. Not everyone had a terrible, terrible childhood, and then the Kundalini comes. Much of this is dependent upon the karma. Actually, all of it is dependent on the karma when we're talking about early childhood experiences. Okay, when I was a child, as far back as I can remember, and I can remember amazingly far back, and I'm not going to go into that, but I can remember very, very far back. As the veil of forgetfulness is placed over a person as they come into life on this world and in the body that they're in, aspects of karma will remain with them. With the Kundalini, though, Kundalini karma often comes in the expression of Kundalini skill sets and gifts And so telepathy, clairvoyance, clairaudience, psychokinetics, all of these things are very clear and very expressive within that child. And depending upon the guidance and the way that the divine within that child wants to sculpt that child's existence, this will determine how those gifts and skill sets are expressed in the early childhood references and options. And so as the karma, whether it's good or whether it's challenging, flows into that person's life, and that person begins to make choices based upon that karma, this will begin the process of that pull I was mentioning earlier, the pull of the Kundalini to begin to refine more and more and more into its preeminent emergence within the individual. And as the build or the pull of this emergence within the individual begins to pick up a stronger frequency of expression within the person, so do the levels of joy and love and bliss and ecstasy begin to very, very, very slowly express themselves into the individual. But the person has to go through a level of refinement first in order for that to occur. A person has to feel the pull of the Kundalini come into them. And this can, in the early stages of Kundalini demonstration upon the person, this can happen through worship in church. This can happen through extreme experiences of love for a child, love for a pet, love for a relationship of love that the person is experiencing in their life. And because love feeds the Kundalini. If we look beyond attachment and we look beyond all the different parameters of behavior that come after the Kundalini has awakened, before the Kundalini has awakened, attachments, of course, are allowed. Attachments, of course, are even fostered and even given into the individual so that they can begin a process of refinement towards the awakened state. And then once the awakened state is attained, those attachments are encouraged to fall away. Okay. So once again, we have the sine wave. We have the sine wave of attachment, peak of attachment, and then falling off of attachment into a valley of non-attachment. Okay. And then, as the Kundalini pull continues within a person, certain levels of information that are gifted to the individual, and by information I mean perceptions, how a person interacts with their social world, with their environmental world, with the inner world of their thoughts and dreams and intuitive experiences and understandings. As a person continues along those lines, those expressions will be sculpted by the Kundalini within them, and they will not know. The person typically does not get to know at the earlier stages that Kundalini is calling the shots for them. It's designing the education specifically for that person and that person's karma. They can't know. They're not ready to know, and so they're not told. They feel themselves attracted to spiritual type things, to expressions of love and healing and grace and protection and defense and all of these levels of challenging fear in our lives or challenging corruption in our lives and challenging the unfairness or the cruelty that we can experience so much in this reality, in this timeline, and on this world. So, in the early section, we don't get to know that it's Kundalini, but we still feel drawing towards an expression of love, whether it's courage, defense, striving to bring justice into the world, striving to bring healing into the world, striving to make that difference in a positive, love-based expression. And the expression of love is huge. It's a huge, multifaceted gem the size of a planet. I mean, it's huge. And the facets of radiance that come off of that gem that we call love is almost infinite in its expressions and combinations of expressions that we can bring and that we have access to in our bodies on this world. And so as the pull of the Kundalini brings a person's interest and behaviors towards bringing justice and goodness and love and courage and bravery and honesty and truth into this world, so does the pull of the Kundalini become stronger. And as it becomes stronger, the drive in the person becomes stronger, and the frequency and the drive of the need. It becomes this need to move into these areas of grace, these areas of exalted service and change upon the world. And as a person begins to move into these areas, a certain threshold, as I mentioned before, a threshold is crossed. And then the Kundalini makes its appearance known through an activation sequence. The activation can be given through a teacher. If they come in contact with the words of a teacher, whether it's on the written page or if it's through a radio show like this, or if it's through a video or a film, or meeting them in person, or just standing next to them in line at the grocery store, an activation sequence can be initiated on a person, and then they begin to feel very, very strong levels of love. But it's not the typical feeling of love that you have. This is a tactile, on the skin, on the body, in the skin, feeling of love. And basically, the human body is covered with millions of snakes. Typically, every human body is covered with millions of snakes. And these snakes we call hair. And the hair follicles, and these little serpents, when the Kundalini bliss begins to rise in a person, it'll rise in different areas for each person, but there are some typical spots where at the base of the spine and bottoms of the feet, the legs, and the torso, depending upon the customized experience the Kundalini is giving to you, will determine where the hair follicles really start to become excited. And as these hair follicles become excited, they begin to move. Each one moves in its own way. And this is the feeling of electric ants or little snakes moving on the body. Well, it's literally the hair follicles. And the hair follicles are just like the human spinal cord. And inside of the spinal cord, there's a channel called the Chitrini channel. That's Chitrini, Chitrini channel. And as the energy of the Kundalini begins to move up this Chitrini channel, which is about the width of a hair, but a long hair, definitely a long hair, because it follows the length of the spine. As the energy moves up the Chitrini channel, this is what gives rise to the many different undulations and movements that the individual goes through with regards to kriyas, with regards to emotions, with regards to the feeling of tactile levels of pleasure and love. As the hair follicles on the body begin to vibrate and move automatically due to the activation sequence reached in a Kundalini awakening person or activated person, levels of goosebumps, what we call them in the English language, goosebumps and vibrations and waves of pleasure begin to oscillate through the human system. And literally, at times, it can feel like a wave of energy just actuates along the hair follicle sections of the body. But it's not just one little hair that's doing it. It's like many of the hairs are doing it. And as it really gets active and strong in its expression, all the hairs will do this. And it'll feel like all the hairs are standing on end, but not in a way that it does when you're afraid or you're walking into a haunted house or something like that. It's not like that at all. It's pleasurable. It feels really, really, really good if you know what is occurring. If the person doesn't know what's occurring, fear is allowed to seep into the experience, and the fear can sap some of the pleasure away from the person. You're going to hear a phone here. I'm not going to answer it, and I apologize for that. But at this point, I'm going to go ahead and give out a number, and that number to call in and ask a question is 347-934-0026. 347-934-0026. So as the activation frequency begins to modulate and to vibrate the hair follicles, and we're not talking just the external hair follicle or the hair itself. We're talking everything that is associated with the hair. The sweat gland is associated with the hair. The hair has a root system that delves deeply into the layers of skin. All of this begins to move. All of this begins to be changed and transformed by the activation sequence that a person is experiencing. And it's quite amazing. It's quite amazing in its feeling, and I definitely encourage everybody to have it. Now, when the fear gets into it, well, of course, the fear is going to take away some of the pleasure, if not all of the pleasure, depending on the level of fear a person is experiencing. And I want you to know that those feelings that you're having, for those of you who are just starting to have it, you need to understand that this is okay. Nothing is wrong. Nothing is wrong. And I'm going to suggest that you just enjoy it. Let it caress you. This is like the breath of the goddess blowing her energy upon your body. And it can be a very, very beautiful tactile experience. So really, really, for those of you that are listening in the archives, hello to you in the future time. Really enjoy this. Allow this to occur. Don't be afraid. Nothing is wrong. This is just the beginning of grace upon the body. And so as you begin to feel these tactile movements, and if you're not injecting a lot of fear into it, you can inject wonderment into it. You can inject wonderment, and you can kind of be shocked and surprised and amazed, as I was when it first started happening to me. But you don't need to be afraid. These are very tingly type feelings. These are tingles that travel, and so you'll have tingles that will go from a channel on your back that'll go right all the way up through one of the arms and into the fingers. You'll have these tingles and these vibrations that move up your spine and cause your back to arch really quickly, and then they'll stop, and then they'll begin again, and then come back, and your back will arch kind of in a spasm. It'll be like a spasm, but it feels really, really good. These are the preemptions of bliss. These are the Kundalini's way of beginning to focus and transform the body into a level of experience where bliss can be attained. And so as the body goes through this transformation, this isn't typically overnight. This will happen day in, day out, night in, night out. It'll happen a lot of the times when you sleep on your right side. If you sleep on your right side with your palms of your hands touching each other as if in a prayer position, or if you're in the Gyan Mudra with both hands, that's one way to encourage these types of experiences to occur. And I do encourage you to encourage that. It's a beautiful, beautiful way of experiencing the beginning transformative qualities of the activating Kundalini. And there's a difference between activation and awakening, which I'm going to get to in a moment. So as these sparkles and tingles and goosebumps of pleasure circulate around the body, or are expressed in one area of the body or multiple areas, allow this to occur. This should feel really good if you can take the fear element out of it. Feels really good. It begins to work on the nervous system of the body, causing jerks and spasms. And once again, that is quite all right. Nothing is wrong. Everything is good. This is normal. Your body is wired to have Kundalini. It's a natural, energetic development within the human being. Just always understand that. It is natural to your body. It is natural to your expressions as a human being. It's just not that common. So as this continues to flood your skin and your hair and the hair follicles and the roots and the sweat glands and all of that, you can understand that it's not just hitting the hairs now. It's going through every cell of the body. Every cell of the body, from the bone marrow outwards towards the tendons and the flesh and the blood and the lymph and all the different components that make up a human body, the Kundalini is beginning to infuse. And you'll feel these tingles sometimes inside out. And they feel, once again, it feels really, really good. Sometimes it can feel like a shock to the system. There are certain areas of activation and awakening that will come across as an electric shock. I have had these, and they're quite surprising, actually. But in this case, in the activation to the pre-activation state, you're feeling these swirls and sparkles and tingles and vibrations of goosebump-type energy moving up your limbs and up your spine and up your chest and around your neck and on top of your head and, at the base of the spine, the palms of the feet, the palms of the hand, the tingles in the fingertips and toe tips, everywhere in between. None of the body gets left out in this. This is a very, very, very strong and beautiful level of experience within the Kundalini. And, I'm going to really encourage you to have this, but don't inject fear into it. You don't need to. You're hearing this information now so that you can take the fear out of it and replace that with gratitude, wonderment, and the fantastic knowing that you indeed are being visited by a divine energy that is transforming you into an expression of grace on this world. So this is very, very, very important, and a lot of people will gain just by standing next to you in the grocery store line or the gas store or the theater. I mean, anywhere that you are, your radiance precedes you and stays there after you leave. And we'll get into this later. So in the pre-activation to the activation stage, the Kundalini is warming up the body, beginning to change certain key organ systems and sub-organelles type systems within the body that that it feels like, such as the endocrine system, and then minor aspects of the endocrine system begin to change, and then the skin and the hair follicle, root of the hair, the layers of skin, and then the blood, and then the bone and the marrow, all the different areas of the body, the brain. And it begins to, you might notice that for some of you, if you're doing a lot of meditation or if you're following a certain belief system or martial art, that you'll be able to feel it going up meridian lines and chi energetic lines that you, and many of you will think you're having this great chi experience when in fact it's a Kundalini experience, but you don't have reference for that. And so, you call it whatever it is you have reference for. With that in mind, as this begins to come up in you and the frequency of the vibrations reach a level, you will have the first spasms of bliss. Bliss will come to you often through there are many vectors that will stimulate a blissful experience. Many of the vectors are love-based. If you see somebody helping in a love-based way, something that you can relate to, being rescued from a river or a heroic action of love, and you see that, and your Kundalini will begin to resonate with that, and it begins to resonate so strongly in you that a level of extreme love is attained. And we're not talking the kind of romantic love or relationship love that occurs when we fall in love with another person. We're not talking about that at all. It is a love that is beyond that. It is beyond that type of love. And excuse the phone ringing. It is beyond that kind of love, and it is beyond that expression of familial or friendship or relationship love. In a way, it's a combination of those levels of love. And it's all those levels of love wrapped into a tiny capsule that is then a part of a larger tapestry of love that you're beginning to experience. And this will often overwhelm the body in a way, and the body may begin to cry. And you're not crying from sadness, but because we're so conditioned in our society to understand that when we cry, we must be sad. A person can feel sad because that's the reference point they have for this level of energetic expression. They feel this love, and they feel their tears pouring out. And they, oh gosh, I must be sad about something, but I'm not sure what. Maybe it's because I'm depressed. Maybe it's because Aunt Jean yelled at the dog and I saw her yell at the dog. Maybe it's because this or that. The scenario is that in the early stages of bliss, a person must channel this very, very strong plasma of love through the body, through the tear ducts, through the breathing apparatus. You'll notice that when a person is in bliss, sometimes they will heave. They will heave. The chest will tense, and the body will heave in expressions of sobs, like they're crying. Or they will actually cry with sobs and sobs and sobs and tears flowing, flowing, flowing. Not because they're sad, not because they're hurt, but because the bliss is running strongly through them. And as this bliss runs strongly through them, until the body is transformed enough through the Kundalini activation, that is how the body can channel such huge energies of emotion, huge energies of love, huge energies of appreciation and gratitude and forgiveness, and all the many facets of that love gem that I was describing earlier. The body must use the tears as a relief valve, and use the heavings and the breathings, the short choppy breaths and the tensing of the entire rib cage and the pulsation of the diaphragm that happens during a person's heaving moments as they're crying. Very similar to what happens, by the way, when we laugh. And when we laugh that way, too, some of the bliss will also, as a person begins to understand what is happening, to begin really enjoying it, they'll begin to laugh uncontrollably. Laugh, 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 laugh. Not because anything is funny, but because that is also another emotional release valve that a person needs to have in order to channel and to hold this level of energy coursing through the body systems. And you may think, well, why isn't it just there all the time? Why does it come and go? Why does it come and go? Well, it comes and goes because you can only handle it being in the system for a short amount of time so that your system doesn't burn out. And the Kundalini knows this. The Kundalini knows this, is that you'll have a wave, you'll have a peak, and you'll have a valley of experience with this. You'll have a peak, 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 where you're having bliss, 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 and then it'll go away, and you'll have like a valley of no bliss. And often people think something's wrong. Oh, what did I do to make the Kundalini angry? I'm not feeling the bliss today like I've been feeling for the past 3 weeks. And all of a sudden it's gone. Well, it's for you to process what you've already been given. It's not because anything has been taken away. It's just because you need time to process what has already been given. This is very important. We must give the body, the emotional body, the psychological body, the mental body, the physical body, and the spiritual body, time to process the levels of grace that have been given. And many of these levels of grace will be given through the expression of bliss. Bliss, this convergence of tactile love upon all 5 bodies of expression. And bodies of expressions, you can do somewhat of a translation into the Purushas in the Sanskrit, or the leaves of expression. So if you take an ear of corn and you pull off a leaf of the corn, well, that's one body of expression, and so on and so forth. So these bodies of expression, all of them are taken over by levels of bliss. This is in the activated state. And so then you have the spinal sweeper. Then you reach a level of activation that pushes you over the edge into the next stage of the Kundalini experience, and that is the awakening stage. Now, this is the stage that will never stop. This is the stage that will never go away. This is the stage, to some degree, during the awakening aspect, unless you have a very strong karma pull for it, you have no choice. In the awakening stage, that light never goes off. No matter what, it never goes off. And you are constantly fed, you are constantly sculpted towards a higher and higher and higher and higher level of enlightenment. And I mean in light, in ment, M-E-A-N-T. So in this enlightenment, it is forever established within you, and from there you begin to walk and talk and act and breathe and relate and live a Kundalini awakened life. And this brings on even higher levels of blissful experience. And these are the ecstatic states of bliss. Ecstasy, most people link ecstasy to the sexual act. Oh gosh, when I had that experience with my wife or my boyfriend or my girlfriend, I was in ecstasy for such and such a time, and my body did such and such a thing. I'm trying to keep this G-rated. And I was in ecstasy for that, however many contractions that was. Great. This is not that. This is not that. This is far, far better than that. This is bliss times 1,000. So, the amazing qualities of bliss where you're heaving and you're crying and your body and your 5 bodies are doing their best to hold on to some of this energy and channel the rest of it. With ecstasy, it's beyond the control of the 5 bodies. There is no more control. With ecstasy, you reach into areas of bliss that are so strong and so absolute and so complete that you are totally controlled. Unless you've had it for many, many times, you're further along in your awakened process. You can't even walk. You'll have memory loss during the time that the bliss occurred. This sometimes happens to me when I'm giving a seminar. And I ask the Kundalini not to do this, but doesn't always listen to me. Once again, I get the admonition. It's not about you, Mr. Christen. It's about the people who are here at the seminar. So, surrender to that. And so, of course, I do. I surrender to it. And invariably, during the seminar, I will give a piece of information to people that the Kundalini really resonates with. That specific group of people need to hear this. And so, boom, in that resonance with the information that's been given, I will begin to feel the heart chakra vibrate strongly, and I will feel levels of bliss and then levels of ecstasy begin to be to be given into the body. And I warn people about this. I've learned to warn people about this at the seminar. But I will literally go into an ecstatic state, and I just have to, I freeze. I freeze up, and, the tears are flowing, and everything is, and it doesn't last very long because the Kundalini in me knows I'm standing in front of a group of people giving a seminar. But it also knows that as this level of grace is given through my radiance, these people who are listening and watching and seeing this occur are also receiving the transformative levels of grace that this can bring. So in other words, if you're standing next to a person that is having ecstatic bliss, levels of transformation are being given to you just for being there, just for being in the presence of a person that is going through this. You understand that? So even the radiance that is occurring all the time with Kundalini, there are extreme levels of radiance that can be given through its expression as a level of ecstasy, ecstatic bliss. And this is so very strong. You don't even want to think that you can resist it. I have a lot of different communities, and some of the people in the community say, wow, I've spent years and years controlling my ego and controlling my emotions, and gosh darn it, I'm as strong as it gets now with my emotions. I can stand anything. Go ahead, tempt me. Go ahead, test my emotional control. And what they have no reference for, and what very few people have reference for, is the level of transformation that the Kundalini brings. You don't get to have the kind of control that your ego thinks it has. The ego during an ecstatic blissful experience is a molecule of dust on the tip of a flagellating micro hair on the human. The ego has absolutely nothing to say about this. It is totally dominated, and so is every other body of expression of the human being as the ecstatic bliss courses through the body. And once again, you can't resist it. It will happen. It will happen. And as you surrender to it, it feels really, really amazing. And, people want to know, well, what do you see? What do you hear? What do you feel? Well, you don't go into physical expressions of sensorial intake. You go beyond the physical expression of sensory input, far beyond it, and you become at one with a level of grace that is higher and that is stronger and that is. I'm going to have difficulty finding words to describe. You enter into the body of God, Goddess. You enter into a divine expression, and it is so overwhelming for these five expressed bodies that comprise our human consciousness, even our higher mental functioning human consciousness, that everything gets kind of blown away. So, for instance, I mentioned the memory loss earlier on. Your memory goes away. You don't get to form a memory engram, right at the beginning of these episodes. Later on, of course, you can. But as you go into these extremely exalted and cherished and energetically compounded, loving, beautiful, fantastic, amazing states of grace, it overshadows and it takes control away from the body's normal level of sensory input, and so the memory isn't as stimulated like it normally would be. And you just have to surrender the memory. You surrender trying to remember exactly what occurred every step of the way as you entered into the heavenly field for that micro moment. And that micro moment is timeless in a way. Sometimes I've had bliss and I felt like I've been there a very long time when in fact just a few seconds have passed. And I come out of it and I'm standing up in front of the people and they're just kind of staring at me with kind of a wry smile on their face going, wow, what just happened to him? And I have to say, where was I? And ask anyone that's been to any of my seminars, and they'll tell you that this occurred. So this will occur for you. This will occur for you, and you won't get to control it, on the one hand. On the other hand, if you surrender completely into your Kundalini grace and you begin to really, really, really flow with the idea and the understanding and the fact of the Kundalini controlling every aspect of your life now, you are not you anymore. You are an exaltation. You are an idea of divinity. You are a symbol of grace. Okay, you have evolved beyond a corporeal, multi-functioning, organic, biological being of communicated agreements between different cellular systems. Okay, you jumped beyond that. And in doing so, you have, that aggregate consciousness of the 17 trillion cells that make up the typical human body. That has also been evolved into a different expression of life. So as you have this grace, you begin to have information downloaded into your mind, into your expressive body, your mental body, your emotional body, about what it is the Kundalini agenda wants for you. And so you may feel these amazing levels of forgiveness overcome you. For no reason, you're just like, oh gosh, I feel so forgiving today. Go ahead, cut me off on the freeway, I'm fine. Go ahead, do this or that. I'm going to forgive you no matter what. I am walking in forgiveness because I have been given to do this through the ecstatic state of Kundalini bliss. This is what's happening to me now. This is how I am now. And this can last for weeks. It can last for 5 minutes. It's all depending on what the Kundalini agenda is for you. The length of time is not important because, once again, 5 seconds can feel like five weeks. Okay. Time and the linear sense and understanding of the passage of time does not equate within the ecstatic blissful states. A lot of people of a Hindu belief system will call some of these states samadhi or nirvana or these types of states. But even those descriptions, they don't qualify as an accurate description because of the customized and individual level of interaction that divinity has with a single person. People are in different developmental states, and you hear a lot about perfection and this and that, and it's like, no. You go beyond levels of what is judged to be perfect. You're beyond that. You're beyond those levels of mental expression or spiritual expression that say, oh, you're this way now. Nobody can be the way that another person, nobody can understand what a person is going through when they have the ecstatic, blissful states occur. It's in very real ways. It goes beyond words, far beyond words. Words are nothing. Words don't even exist to describe this. I'm struggling right now, as you may have noticed, to try to put words to what is occurring in a way that my Kundalini wants it to be expressed to you. As I mentioned earlier, depending on your process with the Kundalini, your individual custom process with the Kundalini will determine what areas of activity or what areas begin to stimulate ecstatic bliss within you. For me, often it's when I'm teaching people. This is kind of what it wants me to do, and so when I'm out there doing that, and I give that kind of information that it really resonates with, well, then you can feel the build. And for me, from my experience with it, you feel it in your heart chakra. I feel it in my heart chakra first, but I know it's coming before I feel it. I know it's like, oh, geez, there, I've done it. The tear ducts begin to fill, and the breathing begins to be altered. Sometimes you have time to warn people that, oh, coming into bliss here, but not most of the time. Most of the time, you just have to kind of turn away and let it run its course. Let it run its course. I'm used to having it happen now so much that I'm good with it. I'm good with it, and it's good with me. And I warn the people that if I'm having it in front of people, I warn people that this is what's going to occur. So no worries. And it comes, and I embrace it, and I encourage you to embrace it too. You are not bipolar. You are not schizophrenic. You are not having any kind of a negative thing. It's a very positive gift of grace for the most part, unless, of course, you're injecting fear into your Kundalini awakening experience. And then, of course, it can be massively frightening for people, massively so, and which can really twist a person's five-body mental response to the grace that the Kundalini gives. And that may also be part of their karmic destiny. So, but for those of you who are new to this or who have had this for a while, you know that you have a divine destiny within the awakened Kundalini. You go online and you read all these horror stories about Kundalini. Oh my God, I started moving spontaneously and I couldn't control it. Well, okay, that makes you think you're sick. Oh my God, I started seeing and hearing people that were dead and nobody else was seeing or hearing. Oh, that makes you think you're going crazy. Okay, so for those of you who to understand that, Kundalini awakening really is this amazing gift, but it's so strong that our society does not have the reference points for it to understand what is occurring. Then you will get it. You'll begin to understand the Kundalini blissful ecstasy that can come, the nirvana experience, the samadhi experience. Okay, you will begin to understand how this affects you. And one of the major things I'm really going to encourage you to do in order to have this is to have extreme levels of surrender to your Kundalini. Give your life to your Kundalini. Give control of your life to the Kundalini. Give every expression and every sense and every idea and everything you have that you can give to the Kundalini in you. If you have a teacher that is Kundalini awakened and who is, giving you instructions to do this or that, well, you do that instruction because you only have that teacher because of your Kundalini. You see, if you've been having Kundalini awakening activation symptoms, and those activations put you in the presence of a Kundalini awakened teacher, well, that teacher is now part of your process. That teacher is part of your process until the Kundalini says otherwise. That person is part of your process, and you are to partake of the teachings that person gives completely without divergence, without ego-based judgments, without fear, without a lack of trust, in complete obedience to the instruction of the divine within, or you wouldn't be in the presence of that teacher. And as some of my private students will tell you, this brings on levels for students that have been drawn to work with me. This brings on very, very strong levels of bliss, and for some of them, they will have ecstatic bliss. It will close your eyes. It will look like to any outside observer like you're crying. But you're not. You're not. You're just experiencing. Really, you're in surrender. And any kind of a Kundalini teacher who is authentic and who knows about these things will just patiently wait for this to pass. And it can happen with every other expression. So, for instance, I'll be having a conversation with a student, and they'll be saying, "Okay," and I did this, and boom, bliss takes over them. And I just wait. And sometimes I'll say, just let it happen, let it occur, don't resist it. I know that you have something else to say, but let the Kundalini have its way. And then the bliss will pass, and then they'll say a few other words, and boom, the bliss comes again. Once again, they allow it to occur. They allow the tears to flow. Nothing is wrong. Sometimes the body spasms. Sometimes they're jerked this way and that, and it's okay. It's nothing, life-threatening. It doesn't even look that bad. It just looks a little spastic. And they come through it, and they'll say a few more words or express another aspect of their experience, or they'll be taking an instruction from me, and boom, it hits again. Okay, so this can be a very, very recurring theme as you develop your levels of surrender. And surrenders are basically, you may be wondering, well, what the heck is surrender, Chris? I mean, you're saying this whole thing about surrender. What surrender really is giving up the authority that you have over your life's choices to the Kundalini. Giving up the ego authority, giving up the mental authority, the emotional authority, the physical authority, the spiritual authority over your life and the choices and decisions you make in your life to that quality of divinity within you that we're calling Kundalini. This is what it means. And this is very hard for some people's ego to it's like, because, you've worked so hard and through the ego to survive what it is to be in this difficult world, this predatory world, and you've learned successful life management techniques based upon ego control. And here this guy with his salt and pepper beard is saying, hey, got to give all that up now. It doesn't fit well for everybody. I understand that. But I'm still going to encourage you to do it. Really do it. Don't give in to ego-based excuses. When you surrender, you begin to foster a conscious nurturing of the divine nurturing that is happening within you. So the transformation that divinity is making within you is being nurtured not only by itself upon your body, but now by your conscious support of that nurturance and transformation upon your body. This is huge. This is a huge agreement that you make with your Kundalini to help it change you, to help it transform you. And as you get with a teacher, you get with a certain level of books, Gopi Krishna or any number of, well, there aren't that many books out there about what I'm talking about. I guess Gopi comes as close to it, and even then he doesn't give instructions so much. I find it hard to find people that give what I'm giving in this way. But anyway, as your Kundalini leads you to specific people to learn specific lessons from, surrender yourself to the Kundalini, choosing that person for you. And from that aspect, surrender yourself to the information that person is giving you. If you don't feel comfortable surrendering yourself to that specific teacher, then don't. Just surrender yourself to the information that teacher is giving. And that can be the same thing in a way. But, as you trust your Kundalini, as you surrender control of your life to your Kundalini, it will get easier and easier and easier. And when I say surrender control of your life, your Kundalini understands that you have kids. It understands that, you've got 4 kids and they're all in different grades of school and they all have to get dressed and they have to have that lunch made and they have to have breakfast and they have to be loaded up in the car or taken over to the bus stop or in some way gotten to their school on time. Your Kundalini understands this. Your Kundalini understands that you have a job to do. You have a job to go to. You have to get up at a certain time. You have to hop in that shower, get your clothes on, your uniform on, whatever it is you wear on. It understands you have to hop in that car or hop on that bus or hop on that mass transit system, whatever that may be. It understands this. It's not going to get in the way of that. It will begin to control how you feel about that. It will begin to control other aspects of your life. It'll control your dreams. And you'll have bliss in dreams that will be directly translated to bliss in the physical. So you'll wake up from a dream having bliss, and you'll be having bliss in the physical body. And this includes ecstatic bliss. When you're having an out-of-body experience, you can have ecstatic bliss. Okay, you can have ecstatic bliss. If you're undergoing a very difficult medical operation, they're cutting your chest open and pulling your heart out and cutting striations in your heart, and they don't know if you're going to survive or not. Your soul, your consciousness can be out of that body, having a blissful experience. When the Kundalini comes to you and begins a dismemberment process, which I haven't talked about yet, during that dismemberment process, you can have a blissful experience. Bliss is used in a many multifaceted way of giving to the human being a level of love and caring and nurturance that goes far beyond what may be occurring to them on a physical, emotional, mental, psychological level. I won't say spiritual because spiritual encompasses, the spiritual body encompasses that type of an experience. So So bliss and ecstasy are common denominators within a Kundalini awakening or activated experience. It draws you forward. I'm being told to put the number out here again. To call in as a guest, the number is 347-934-0026. You could call and ask a question about any aspect of your Kundalini awakening experience. The number is 347-934-0026. Santara, do you have any experience of bliss or ecstasy you'd like to talk about?
Hi, Chrism. I've been listening to great attention, and I don't have anything to really share. I don't know. But what you have said has been my experience in many cases, yeah. But no, I don't.
Okay, no worries. So as the person begins to experience great levels of ecstasy and bliss, so does their process begin to move forward in a greater and more expressive way. The dream life, as I mentioned before, begins to be taken over. And not taken over in a bad way, although at first, oh my gosh, it can seem so scary, these talking serpents or these talking wolves or these talking animals in some way, shape, or form, or an angel may come down and begin to talk with a person, or a man in a meditation pose floating down on a cloud and just beginning to strike up a conversation, or just a regular-looking person coming up to you and beginning to point out some spiritual values and teachings that it wants you to hear. This is all manifestations of the Kundalini. The Kundalini can come to you if it's sacred feminine, the Shakti. The Kundalini will often appear as a woman in red, or a woman in white, or an old woman with a corresponding color fixation, or a young, very young girl dancing in flowing purple gowns, or the sacred masculine, coming as a strong and exceptionally handsome person, or the sacred masculine coming in as a lion, or some kind of a representation of the sacred male that wants to give its communication to you in the dream state. So keep an eye open for that in your awakening process. Surrender yourself to your Kundalini. You read a lot. You hear a lot, with people on the internet, people in YouTube, people in books. They're saying, wow, when the student is ready, the teacher will come. Well, the teacher's not always going to be a personification of a human teacher. Sometimes that teacher will come from the base of your spine. And then that teacher from the base of your spine will direct you to a physical teacher, like myself. Sometimes the teacher, that is coming will indeed be a physical person teaching a specific knowledge base, but it may be only a portion of the information that the Kundalini wants you to have at that time. So, for instance, it's the way of taking a class. So this is a class. This hour and a half that we're talking about right now is a class on ecstatic bliss. This is the ecstatic bliss class. This is the primer, should we say, to the ecstatic bliss class that the Kundalini wants you to understand. And I want to say hello to guest number 3205. Hello, thank you for joining us. Guest number 2781. Thank you for joining us. Hello, Bashji. Bashji, it's always a pleasure to see you here. And so, some of the guests that I see there on the chat room, I'd like to say hello to you all. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for many of those who will join us in the future with the archives. Kundalini is a timeless experience, and so the very fact that you're there with us in the future is appreciated right now in this time present. Your flow and your grace are felt and appreciated too. With the Kundalini ecstatic blissful states, I have not been able to walk. I get frozen in place. And so my motion is definitely limited, except for the heavings and the sighs and the tears and some shaking that occurs. I don't get to walk. I know that Ramakrishna would walk. He could walk around his students. I mean, he was kind of acting pretty strange. And he looked pretty strange. I mean, they have some extant pictures of Ramakrishna walking. That's Rama and then Krishna, Ramakrishna. And Google him and look at him in a state of ecstasy. Ecstasy is for me, it's so strong for me that I can't walk. I just have to stand. Sometimes I can't even stand. Sometimes I must sit. It'll depend on the Kundalini and what its agenda is for me within the gifting of that exalted state. If I'm up in front of a group of people, then it will have me stand. If I'm laying in bed or sitting in a chair, well, then of course it's not gonna jerk me up in a standing position. It'll just come to me within that level. Often you may get bliss when you're driving, and just let it come. Keep your eyes open. If you can pull off, so much the better. Typically, you won't get ecstatic bliss when you're driving. Okay, I always want to come into these areas because, I don't want people to think that, oh my God, I'm going to have ecstatic bliss while I'm driving, and there I go. It's not going to occur. You have to remember the intelligence of the Kundalini itself. It knows you. It knows you're behind the wheel. What you may not want to do is try to consciously stimulate Kundalini when you're behind the wheel. Then you're injecting your ego expectation and control and decision and choice upon your Kundalini awakening platform, and that can have disastrous results. I did this once when I was driving. And I've mentioned this before, so I'll only go over it briefly. When I was driving a big car on Highway 12 in Northern California through the wine country, and I had just, it was early in my process, and I had just heard something about the extreme cold that can come, and I said, okay, fine, here I am driving down this bucolic highway. It's very beautiful highway in a nice car. And I felt safe because, I've driven so many miles that I feel very safe behind the wheel. And I said, okay, bring it on. Let's see. What do we have to do here? Boom. The extreme cold started to build in the between the first and second chakra, and it started to expand up my front channels. And the tactility of it was so shocking and so amazing that I immediately pulled off the road and asked it to go down. I said, thanks, but maybe not when I'm driving. And I really encourage you to adopt that understanding. Don't do anything of a meditative or Kundalini actuating quality while you're behind the wheel. And I know that you may have sudden states of absorption happen to you. This is a form of Siddhic ecstasy. Siddhic meaning an ascended skill. Ecstasy meaning a higher vibrational component of that extended, that exalted skill. And so you're mixing bliss and ecstasy with a divine skill, and this happens a lot with healing. With healing, you can begin to go into ecstasy at the time that you're giving somebody a healing. And it can be a very, very beautiful experience. It can also be a very, very powerful healing for the person. But once again, this is a choice that the Kundalini makes. You don't necessarily get to go, okay, let's see who's on my docket here. Oh, yes, I see. Oh, Amelia Centaura. Okay. Well, I think I'm going to give Amelia Centaura an ecstatic, blissful healing today. Okay, Amelia, put on your seatbelt. No, you don't get to do that. You surrender to the Kundalini, and within that surrendering, the Kundalini brings you what it knows you can have. Once again, you don't know as much about yourself as the Kundalini knows about yourself. It knows your karma. It knows your weaknesses. It knows your fears. It knows your strengths. Okay, it knows how to teach its child, its Kundalini child, which is what you are. So as you go into telepathy and say you narrow in, the Kundalini has you narrow in on a specific frequency where you're hearing only one person's thoughts out of say a whole mall of thoughts, right? It's being focused into a narrow band communication where you can see and hear, you can see the thought pictures and you can hear the thoughtful inner conversation or inner dialogue that person has about themselves, and we'll say that they're just they're kind of going off on themselves about how bad they are, or how ugly they are, or how inappropriate they are, or how they're really. And the Kundalini said, no, this person needs a little bit of a boost here. Let's go ahead and give it to them. Their karma can have this. They're here in your presence. Therefore, here you go. And as you give that love and you give that healing, or the Kundalini gives it to them through you, you begin to feel that expanded state of bliss. Not necessarily ecstatic bliss, but it's typically the bliss state is typically a really good state to be in when a healing is given. The bliss state is not the ecstatic bliss. The ecstatic bliss is like 1,000 times the bliss state. So you have the three stages of bliss. You have actually 4 stages. No bliss. No bliss is a stage, right? But it's that drawing. So we'll just say the pre-bliss state. Then you have the peri-bliss state where you're just getting little touches of it, and the tingles are going up the spine and up the different trunks of the body. And then you have the bliss state where you're having full-on tear-evoking, body-heaving, body-shaking bliss. And then you have the ecstatic bliss state where you're beyond measurement. You're into the divine, and the divine is into you in such a powerful way that it defies verbal description, absolutely defies verbal description. So these 4 states of bliss is what I've been talking about today, and which anybody who is having a Kundalini awakening experience can partake of, or is already partaken of. For those of you that are considering or being pulled towards the Kundalini, this is an information reference point for you. Once again, as you experience a Siddhic skill or an exalted skill that comes with the Kundalini, and you're applying that exalted skill in a love-based way, often levels of bliss will be actuated within the person. Some of the healers that I'm training, I will give, I should say the Kundalini in me will give to them an instruction to go into deep, deep, deep levels of devotion before they give a healing. Okay, they go into very, very deep levels of loving devotion to the Kundalini, to their Kundalini teacher. They give very, very strong levels of devotion into that. Then they go into the healing. Boom. That's when the bliss states can begin to accentuate the healing, or actually the bliss itself, and the devotion and the love amplified by the Kundalini will begin to form a healing mechanism upon the person who is receiving it. And some of the people that receive these healings are literally brought to tears of appreciation, tears of reception. It's a very beautiful, beautiful thing to be a part of, and I do recommend any and all of you that are having Kundalini to explore the idea and the application of Kundalini healing. And in this way, I'm going to suggest that you might want to talk with Santara about Kundalini-infused Therapeutic Touch, K-I-T-T, Kundalini Infused Therapeutic Touch. I think I've mentioned it a couple of times on this in these broadcasts that we've been giving. Once again, I have a few announcements I want to make. The Boston seminar that was scheduled for October has been canceled, so nobody should be signing up for that. As Santara indicated earlier in this program, I would accept and appreciate donations of any denomination that you feel this information is worth to you. The donation can be given at ascensionkundalini.blogspot.com. So if you just go ASCENSION Kundalini KUNDALINI .blogspot.com. You'll see the donate button there, and there's information about the Kundalini on that blog as well, Ascension Kundalini, and I suggest that you partake of that. We are currently in the sign-up stage of a Kundalini Awakening Shakti Pot that I'm giving for the summer solstice, and I encourage you to sign up for that at the Kundalini Awakening Systems 1 at yahoogroups.com or the Chrism Shakti Pot, Chrism Kundalini Shakti Pot, I believe is what it's given as on the Facebook groups. But you can also access that through Kundalini ! Or Kundalini Awakening Systems 1 on Facebook groups. And feel free to contact me, kfireforall, that's F-O-R, all, kfireforall at yahoo.com if you have any questions. Also go to the YouTube channel where I have about 240 some odd videos about your Kundalini Awakening process, much shorter versions of these types of conversations that we've been having today. So that is YouTube, and you can just go Chrism Kundalini at YouTube, and you'll see, some guy with a beard, sometimes in a Hawaiian shirt, giving a video about the Kundalini. The YouTube channel is Chrism O Kundalini, but the O is the 0, so Chrism 0 Kundalini, and it's like 0 point Kundalini, and you can reach the channel there. And do you have anything that you'd like to say, Amelia?
I do actually. Just a little correction on the website. There's a hyphen between the word Ascension and Kundalini. So it's www.ascension-kundalini.blogspot.com.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so there you go. You have the hyphen in it. So feel free if there's a donation that you feel that you can make to what it is that is being done here. I'd be greatly appreciative of it. And if there is no donation, I am still greatly appreciative of you even listening to this. So without further ado, I would like to once again thank Amelia Santara and her family in the Kingdom of Kerry in Ireland. I'd like to thank Eileen Laurel. I'd like to thank Ed and all the private students, that I have, Magdalene and the Northern Woman and a lot of the folks who don't want to be named. I just want to thank you for choosing to work with me and choosing to surrender to your Kundalini. Thank you for listening, and hopefully we'll have another conversation next week. Bye-bye.
Beobachten wir heute mal die Geschicklichkeit von Holger dem Schreiner. Während seine rechte Hand ein Brett trägt, schreibt die linke eine Rechnung. Gleichzeitig öffnet sein Fuß die seitliche Schiebetür seines Citroën Jumpy.
Ein guter Transporter ist wie ein guter Handwerker, ein echter Allrounder. Der Citroën Jumpy schon ab 175 € im Monat. Optional mit Hands-Free Schiebetüren. Jetzt bei den Citroën Business Days. Citroën.